George. I'm going to go over the internet weather for the past week, ending yesterday, until yesterday, January 20th to 27th. In the first slide, we have top 10 most probed ports. As you can see, the first one would be 23 Telnet, 445 SMB, 1433 MS SQL, 8545, and 3389 AT&T TCP. Those are the ones I want to talk about. Basically in the table, what it is telling is the top ports this week, and what's their position last week, and how much change it has. The last column is the change. I mean, +1 means last week 23 was at the second position. This week jumped by 1 position to the first position. Vice versa, if it is a negative number, it's how many places it's dropped.
Okay.
You know, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. The ones with, for example, rank numbers 5 to 7, the ones I want to talk a little bit more about. The first one is 8545, which is used by Ethereum, which is a miner. And we all know there are so many exploits, basically. I think they're JSON RPC, which is used to exploit these Ethereum clients and use it for mining and other purposes. There's RPC, remote access vulnerability, and that's not the one, but that's most popular one, which actually attackers use to exploit this Ethereum by that exploit. Here we are showing, I think, last 365 days worth of probing happening on your common backbone. As you can see, there's lots of activity around last February, I think start of February for some time, and then kind of scaled down. But still, if you see, I think just before the holidays, like mid-December, there was a big spike. And afterwards, it's kind of, the traffic is kind of leveled up. This is the graph, this is the view when I was doing internet weather last month, and sometime in December.
Okay.
This was a graph like that. For example, if you switch between those, not much difference. I mean, the traffic volume seems to be now, at the same levels as last time we saw it. Okay, that being said, how many scan sources are seen on this one? Scan sources are in the sense, any scanners like internet scanners looking for this 8545 port.
Okay.
The scanning activity is pretty much standard for the last 365 days. As you can see here, the volume, pretty much a little bit variations.
Slightly, yeah.
Slightly, I think it's ramping up a little bit since maybe early November, maybe late November time frame. But if you see the spikes, I want to just brought this one to, there were spikes for almost at the regular interval of time. Let's say maybe every 7 days, 10 days, something like that. Sometimes the time frame is a little bit longer, but you can see there a big spike happening. What does that means? There might be a one or few, like very few scanners, new scanners coming in. They're scanning it and they're going dormant. Again, they come back at some point, like maybe 7 days, 10 days, whatever the time frame.
Right.
They scan again and they go back dormant again.
Okay.
That's what actually this graph is representing with those spikes you're seeing out there.
So they're representing new scanners that have never hit those ports before, but see it now, and they just put everything they have.
If you see with the regular volume, these are the newer ones, obviously.
Yep.
Okay. And the second one I want to talk about is 3389, which is a remote desktop protocol. Even though it gained a few points in our top probes, but if you look back like a 365 days here, the activity volume is pretty much at the same levels. There's not just change actually, in fact. But still, it's came up on our actually the top list. I want to show the graph. There's not much activity going in other than what we are typically seeing it.
And these are just scans, right? These are not necessarily successful connections.
This is probes. They could be successful also. These are probes. They could be scanner. Some scanning activity. They could be successful connections. But RDP, sometimes you need it.
Right, yeah.
It can be abused.
As we've seen.
As we've seen, if it's not properly secured. I think he also talked about the least privilege. That's a perfect example in this case.
And could this have anything to do with the recent Microsoft vulnerability they found in the remote desktop?
I mean, by looking at a few of the reports, I haven't found anything.
Okay.
But maybe if I dig a little bit further, maybe we may find it, but may not necessarily. I don't think it's looking for something.
Okay.
And this is the scanners, as you said.
Yeah.
Again, 365 days.
Pretty flat. Yeah. I mean, it's high, but it's
high.
It's pretty steady, right?
Yeah. Sometime last mid-year there was a big spike, and from there they were kind of scaling down, and again they're kind of increasing. Maybe, as you said, you see the increase whenever there might be some Microsoft patches are released.
Okay. Right.
You might see a spike at that point. I mean, like a few days here and there.
Yeah.
You see a spike, especially if they have something related to remote desktop protocol or something like that.
Right, there'll be some scanning attempts made, of course, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
And this is geographical map of what kind of scan sources seeing, how the distribution is. As you can see, the darker the yellow, as you're moving from red to yellow, basically, the more concentration it is. For example, this is the heat map. This is the lowest. As you go further to this color, I think you see more concentration of the scanners.
Yeah.
Pretty much, I mean, by looking at, I think quickly we can say it's mostly concentrated in Asia Pac region.
Yep.
Most of the scanners, and also some in North American region. Especially in these areas, I think you have a couple scanners.
Right.
It's possible there might be regular internet scanners always looking for some vulnerable devices. It could be possible of that one too.
Right. Okay.
As you can see, there are not many. About less than 2,000 scanners, so that's a small number.
Okay, is that about the average amount of?
And not necessarily. That varies from port to port.
Oh, okay.
For example, if it's a heavy used port, you may see like thousands, maybe sometimes 10,000s. So
makes sense. Yeah.
I think for RDP, I say it's a low number.
Okay.
Based on what I have seen in the past.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean you can't argue, whether it's good or bad.
Right. It could
you have to dig in further and see what's really happening.
Just as the quantity is not there doesn't mean the quality, so to speak, of the connection is there. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay.
Let's move on to the third port is a port EAD, which is HTTP. Even though it came up, I mean, you obviously always accept lots of traffic to HTTP, any HTTP port for that matter. But in this case, I think it's pretty normal. I think we saw big spikes last year, like in the last 2 months ago.
Okay.
If you look back since late November, maybe start of November, I think there's not much activity. But even it jumped up, as we can see, it's a business as usual, I think.
Okay, business as usual.
Mm-hmm. But I also included this one because with the story MikroTik botnet, it can use AT or AT&T TCP. I want to see if we see anything increased activity because of that one. But obviously, there's nothing we cannot.
Oh, okay, so nothing matched up from the release of that data comparing to the port activity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, then next we move on to most sources probing. Again, we are showing the top 10 list here.
Okay.
Sources are here, the scanners.
Right.
Different from the probes. Here you can see again the table follows the same format, like you have changed from the last week, what's the position this week. Again, I would like to point out to the two with red marks.
Yeah.
Because 44523, ATT 1433, they're pretty much standard, and there's no change actually. That's what that change. If you see that dash, that's basically they're maintaining their positions.
Yeah, the two you've highlighted have a significant jump, so I'm pretty curious.
Yes. Even 22 is there, but I would like to talk about 8291 and 8728.
All right.
But one interesting thing is 555 TCP at the 10th position, which is Android debug port, which is typically used to be the top. I mean, it is always trending up. This week it seems to be dropped, 2 positions.
Interesting.
Huh. Anyways, moving on to the 8291 TCP, it's a MikroTik used for Winbox service.
Yeah, well that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it has multiple vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Not one, two. Basically, there are also chain of commands, vulnerabilities you can use to get own the MikroTik devices. So it's possible that's Winbox is the most popular one.
Yeah.
Winbox is nothing but it's a tool you use to administer the MikroTik device.
remotely, right?
Remotely.
From the outside, right? Okay.
Remotely. I mean, typically it meant for Windows-based systems.
Right.
But it can be run for, I think, any Linux or Unix flavor with Wine or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And a lot of that could be just from users setting up these MikroTik boxes and never going into the settings and disabling remote access, right?
Yeah.
It goes back to the whole basic fundamentals of hardening, right? Yeah.
And you can see there was a sustained scanning or probing happened, I think late June until I think September. There's a sustained time, as you can see the peaks.
Right, pretty steady.
And then it dropped for a couple months again. Actually, it kind of ramped up.
Maybe they pushed out a patch? Well, no, they didn't push out a patch.
Actually, that's where around that time they had a patch. They kind of slowed down. Again, there are a couple of exploits released. I think one exploit, after some time another exploit. I think around maybe December timeframe, around that time they had this chain OS router exploit. Basically, they have 3 or 4 exploits which you can use to get the MikroTik boxes. So they're all happening. Okay, what this port is registered for is a MikroTik API, and API, as you know, for accessing it, like.
Right.
How is that useful? I think sometimes it's used to get the information about the device, in this case MikroTik's device or router.
Okay.
Maybe gather some information. With the right credentials, I think you could also administer the device. If you tie up this, I think this port and the other port I showed just before 8291 should be related.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, let's see if there is any correlation between these two ports.
Okay.
And in the next graph, if you put it actually perfectly
line up. It lines up perfectly, yeah. Amazing, okay.
I mean, I just want to bring those to the attention, you know, what we can see from the common backbone, and based on the graphs, we can pretty much correlate with what's happening.
Would you think this is a fair assessment? Like if so, we're figuring out that maybe they issued a patch, right? So a few users grabbed that patch, loaded the patch, so the scanning, the scanning sources stopped, and then maybe the spike is.
I think whenever there's a spike or increase in volume or what was the traffic, I think there was in this case, in MikroTik devices cases, some sort of exploit or vulnerability has been found. Yeah,
you think maybe they kind of deconstructed the patch, saw what was patched, found their way around it, and then maybe
that's sometimes it's possible. Sometimes, I mean, the patch itself is not sufficient.
Yeah,
maybe it has itself something, you know, some
introduces maybe a new vulnerability.
Maybe it's not patched properly.
Yep. Okay. They rushed it maybe, or
there could be innumerable ways.
Yep.
But it's also possible to exploit. You know, if it's connected to the internet, we all know it just takes time to judge.
Yeah.
And let's see, I mean, again, I'm showing the geographical distribution of the sources or scanners for this one. As you can see, it's heavily concentrated in Asia-Pac region.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think it's also agrees with the thing. I think MikroTik devices are most popular in that region. Mm-hmm. I mean, we also have some MikroTik devices in US also. But if you can see, I think that agrees with where their most of the devices are.
Yeah, it makes sense, right.
And also the number of scanners in this case for both the ports, 8291 or other port, they pretty much lines up. We were 10 or 20 sources here and there, but pretty much they kind of agrees with each other.
Amazing.
So that means same set of scanners is looking for both the ports.
That's great analysis. Yeah,
I think that's all I have to show for this week.
Amazing. So, okay, great. So we just need to get the word out there that people have to patch their MikroTik routers, because if they don't, no one's going to do it for them.
Yeah. I mean, it goes for any device.
Any device, right.
Device.
Yeah. Any device that doesn't have push enabled to get from the manufacturer to get these updates. Yeah. Right. Which is.
It's a blank. You have to substitute the blank with the device you want to patch it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. When we put it in our graphical view, we can definitely see the coordinated actions happening at the same time on both the ports.